I'm the music god. This is the Noize Report. You know what we do here? Same thing every time. We laugh, we have fun, we interview cool and interesting people randomly from the music, movies, pop culture universe. And tonight, we're going to talk to this gentleman over here. He comes courtesy of Nika over there, um, and his name is Dr. Neal Barnard. I still got
That's it.
Barnard. Okay. Uh, he is the leader of a really awesome group called Carbonworks. There's a few other projects he's involved in. He's a doctor, a lot of accolades. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about music and just pretty much anything else that comes up. But we'll start by letting him kind of give a brief introduction, background on himself, where he comes from, uh, whatever other talking points he wants to throw out there.
Great. Well, first of all, thank you. It's an honor to be on your program. So thanks for letting me join you today. Um,
Absolutely.
Personally, I live in Washington, D.C., which is where I'm talking to you from now. And I've been here for a long time, but I did not grow up here. I grew up in North Dakota.
Nice.
Don't know if you ever saw the movie Fargo.
Yep.
That was my mom in that movie. Not exactly, not exactly, but that's where I grew up.
Right.
And when I was a kid, my parents had the idea that all kids needed a good, strict music education. So at age 6, I was sort of chained to the piano. And then at age 9, I was given a cello. And I could appreciate the fact that there was some beauty in these instruments. But to my little tender self, there wasn't any emotion in it. Um, and I remember at age 4 turning on the TV, and there was a crooner on the stage with a microphone, and she was singing, "Fly Me to the Moon" or something like that. And I remember thinking, why are you doing this? To me, I remember thinking this doesn't have the emotion that music needs to have. And
Mm-hmm.
then when I was about 10, the Beatles arrived in the United States. They were on Ed Sullivan. And to me, my black and white world turned into color because this was music
Right.
where there was emotion, there was fun, there was aggression is too strong of a word, but there was assertiveness and the idea of we
Yeah.
are going to do something that
There
has
was an
something heard
attitude.
before. Yeah, that's exactly it. And so, I mean, I had my cello, I had my piano, but I strapped on a guitar. I thought, man, this is something else. But as time went on, I found myself wanting to make that more expressive too. And so I got into more bluesy kind of things with Cream and Hendrix and Stevie Ray Vaughan, and then into
Yeah.
jazz with Mahavishnu, and then like serious jazz with Miles Davis and John Coltrane, and really trying to understand all of this stuff. So that was one big thing for me. But the other thing that happened to me was when I was in high school, Fargo South High School, junior. I was plucked out and stuck into a school in Belgium as an exchange student. Now,
Nice.
I don't speak a word of Flemish. They didn't speak a word of English. And I was a little bit mocked for my kind of um, American pride. America, we're the greatest, da da da. And these people that you are all wet.
Yeah.
And I got it. I have to confess that I found myself thinking, there's a whole world out there
Mm-hmm.
of different cultures, different ideas, different politics, different music, different languages, different ways of behaving. And I found myself feeling like I wanted to be a student of that. So the reason I'm telling you all this is that when we've had many bands over the time, but what I've wanted to do is to be open to who's ever opening that curtain on the stage. And what have they got to say to us? Whether it is some gut punch from the blues from New Orleans or something like that, or whether it's somebody who's from the British rock who wants to scream out what they're feeling, or new wave and punk, which was a little bit hard for me to get into at first. But then I got to tell you, I found myself embracing the quirky goofiness of punk and working that in. Um, and but I also have wanted to be available to international music. And on Carbonworks, you will hear French voices, Italian voices, and Vietnamese voices. So anyway, forgive me for this long-winded
No,
autobiography, but that has been kind of the painting box that we have used. I am not interested in writing a song that's going to appeal to taste and make me some dough, or that I can stand up on it, to a microphone and just sing because other people have sung it or something like that. What I want to do is, my hope is to have music that I would actually like to hear. And I'm hoping other people will want to hear. And sometimes I'm trying to express something. Other times I'm just thinking, maybe you'll think this is cool. So anyway, that's the whole idea of Carbonworks.
No, that's one of the things I found amazing about hearing this, because I'm new to it as a listener. I hadn't heard any of the music before. I am eclectic at best, probably psychotic at worst when it comes to music. I drive my friends and family crazy because I go from one extreme to the next, musically. And I listen to, I grew up on classic rock and southern rock. My dad's a truck driver, has been. This is his 52nd year driving semi. So I grew up in the front seat of a Peterbilt, and this was the early 70s. So this was long before laptops and cell phones, and I had music and I had books to occupy my time. So I just immersed myself in reading, and then the music that I had, I would spend hours looking at. You remember, they used to have like the lyric sheets or the artwork and the liner notes and all of that. I used to spend hours just reading those and memorizing those, of everything I could get my hands on. But then when I was old enough and I had to go to school, I kind of had to stay at my grandfather's house. He was in the classic country. So I got that. And then, I went to live with my mother. It was right as sort of hair metal was taking off, and she lived out in LA. So I was thrust into living with her. She was 2 blocks off of Sunset. So I was literally walking past all of those bands as they were blowing up. Quiet Riot, Motley Crue, Shark Island, LA Guns, all of those bands. Then I got into punk and metal, and I've over the years, I've been exposed to all of these musics from all over the world in weird ways, but it's always expanded my thinking and my way of seeing the world, because as Americans, we, like you said, we don't realize how much talent is really out there in other parts of the country. And spending summers in the Philippines and discovering that the Philippines, a lot of Filipinos love heavy metal. There's a huge metal scene in the Philippines, and you wouldn't, in your brain as an American, you wouldn't think heavy metal in the Philippines, but there is. I have friends in a metal band that live in Pakistan. I have friends that play reggae that are from Japan. So I've come across this amazing music from all over the world and discovered these artists, and it's broadened my taste in music, but also understanding that music really is sort of the one thing that unites everyone everywhere, whether there's a language barrier or whatever barrier there may be. Music kind of always transcends that, and is something that everyone can kind of grab that ring and hold on to it and share that moment, share that brotherhood. And I love that this record has so many different styles and flavors, and it's sort of so outside of the box, quote unquote, per se, musically. So
Well, when you're talking about the music of the Philippines and so forth, um, I've had a kind of a relationship with Vietnam, as I guess we all have.
Hmm.
Kind of growing up, it was sort of the last place that I wanted to go, um, for obvious reasons, back in the day. However, there is tremendous beauty there. I
Yeah.
mean, in so many ways. And the funny thing about the music of Vietnam is that in the same way as blues plays a pentatonic scale,
Hmm.
the flat third and the flat seventh and all that kind of stuff, Vietnamese exactly the same.
Yeah.
And where was I? I was in San Francisco in the Chinatown district, and years ago, and I started buying all these different Asian music. They had these little stores. They would sell
Hmm.
you Chinese, Japanese, Vietnamese. Got this CD. No, no, this was a cassette tape. And back in those days, and I put it in my car and I started playing this. And I thought, this is the coolest stuff ever.
Yeah.
It was traditional Vietnamese folk music.
Hmm.
But I called up the people who had recorded it. And I said, you wouldn't be offended, would you, if I were to play this with drums, bass, my Les Paul? I wanted to see how these instruments that will play exactly that pentatonic scale would
Hmm.
take this traditional music. And so I got to tell you, I think it worked great.
Yeah.
And it works out so beautifully. And then so I thought, well, what the hell? Let's just play together. And so on the Carbonworks record that you have, we have Phi Kanya, who's an incredible singer, from the LA area, south of LA. And she is singing on here what is in fact a traditional Vietnamese song. It's a beautiful plaintive song about a woman whose man is gone. And it's, half this bed is waiting for you. Half of my life is waiting for you. Come back. And I took that and I just rocked it out, and with her on it. But anyway, it is the coolest thing in the world when you can combine these things. Now you got to be careful because you can do things that are just um, silly or token or something like that. What you want to do is you want to let the beauty of the music get together. The people who are playing the music have to believe in it. They got to want to do it. They got to come in and you join hands and you make a cool song.
Yeah. I, about 6 months ago, 8 months ago, I guess, I started a music reaction channel because I was bored and I just wanted to occupy my brain. Um, and I honestly didn't think that it would go anywhere because I kind of had this mindset of, I'm just one more of a million other people doing reaction videos and whatnot. And the damn thing took off. And in 8 months, I've managed to get like 13,000 subscribers and almost a million views. And oh shit, okay, I got to take this serious. In the process of doing that, I've discovered a lot of artists that people have started. Hey, you have to react to this person, react to this person. And I've discovered people like Damash and people like Alit Bata, who, if you've never heard Alit, he's from Indonesia, and he is probably the best fingerstyle guitar player I've ever heard in my life. The guy is just phenomenal, and he's so humble and he's so low key. There's nothing flashy about him. He works as a forklift driver, and then he comes home and he sits in his son's room, and he's got the little ABC number chart behind him, and you can tell it's just this very average run of the mill house, and he'll sit there just one take, and he'll light a cigarette, and he'll put it on the end of the guitar, and he'll play these mind blowing renditions of these songs, and he doesn't smoke, but he uses the guitar or the cigarette to demonstrate that it's essentially one take, that you can watch it as a cigarette kind of burns down as he's playing. And he doesn't want to be famous, he doesn't want to do live shows, any of that. He just does it because guitar playing is his love. And I watch his videos and I just think to myself, God, this guy is like, he could be world famous because he's managed to accumulate tens of millions of viewers and things in every video. And again, it demonstrates that there's music from all over the world. Again, that you never know how you're going to run across it, but when you do, like you said, an open mind, you have to appreciate the beauty of it and the the heart and soul, I guess, that goes into it. Because I I love American music, don't get me wrong, and I love the classic stuff, but sometimes it's so formulaic that it really does get boring, and I want to hear something different. And I love that there are people out, or there's artists out there wherever they're from, that think outside of the box and are willing to take that chance and just say, you know what, I'm not trying to have a number one single. I'm not trying to uh I'm not trying to write something that is going to play on radio per se. I just want to do it for the love of the art itself. And again, I I'm so appreciative because it really has saved my life on
Well,
so many different times.
I hope you like the new album. The new album's called
Yeah,
Vanishing Act. It's coming out
I love it. I
early
love
next
it to
year.
death.
And there's a couple of things on there. You got to be, at least I feel like I got to be a little bit careful about making a statement in music. But the first song is called Athena, and it starts out, it's in French,
Mhm.
and it's really about the capriciousness of life. That we didn't ask to be born. What the hell are we doing here? But then it goes off into this musical tangent. I got to tell you, it's so gorgeous. Bobby Reed's the horn player on there. He takes off, and there's me on guitar, and Allegra Havens, who is a classical violinist with the Virginia Symphony, but just fabulous. So Bobby is the jazz horn player, and there's me, rock guitar, and Allegra on classical violin. And we just take off. But then the song grows, and the end is in Latin and this triumphant thing. It's almost like the Handel's Messiah. But I'm thinking, okay, all right, AM radio airplay, probably not. But to me, it's really cool. But then there is one song that I got to tell you, CJ, it is a statement, I got to say. It's called the International Anthem. And
That was literally one of the things I was going to ask about, because
I got to tell you, I am here to dissolve national borders. The song starts out with the U.S. national anthem,
mhm,
and then it drifts into just right away into the UK national anthem, into the French national anthem, into the Italian national anthem, into the German national anthem,
yeah,
and then they all mush together. You can't really describe this, but they're all being sung one on top of the other, all over each other,
mhm,
and the song. It's amazing how actually they weave together very beautifully as music, but then the song degenerates which is kind of a statement of saying that if we are going to say, okay, America's the best, Canada, you stink. Or France is the best, Germany, you stink. Wait. At some point, we've got to kind of reach across the border and hold hands a little bit. And so that song, it's called the International Anthem. And I think, I guess I can't wait to see what the public thinks of that. But then there's also just some things to get you tapping your toe. There are a few new wave holdovers back in here in DC. DC is a government town. Quiet at night, 10 o'clock at night, a lot of parts of this town are dead quiet. But back in the 80s, there was a club that got started called the 930 Club, and it was at 930 F Street, and it was the place. And my band would play there a lot, and I love this place because they had a dressing room, and they would treat you well.
the green room.
Oh my God. And they had a sound system that was really good. And of course, since that time, they moved away from 930 F Street into a much bigger venue. But it was a wonderful time. And those influences have come through too.
I've been to Washington, D.C. one time in my life. Me and some friends drove out there to see a show with Minor Threat and Bad Brains. So that was my only time of ever coming to DC.
Well, come back while it's still here. Who knows?
Yeah,
The way things are going, there could be a nuclear plume cloud, mushroom cloud any day. So anyway, come on back. We're here for the moment.
Yeah, the funny thing is, I'm very political, but I try not to talk about it much because my political opinions are harsh.
Yeah, I understand.
Um, and not in a bad way. I'm I'm very common sense with politics. Like I don't lean left or right. I lean, is it humane? Is it good for people or bad for people? I look at it from a very black and white. And I know when you're dealing with politics, that's probably a bad way to do it. But, I look at things like, I was raised by a grandfather who was very much, hey, you treat me right and I'll treat you right. Be kind, treat each other with kindness, and you helped your neighbors regardless of all of that. And I always tell the story. My grandfather's best friend was our next door neighbor. Walter was My grandfather spent 38 years working for General Motors, card carrying member of the Union, Democrat, even now. Walter was the complete opposite. He was the gun toting, John Wayne loving, red blooded Sam Elliott type, you know. But even with those differences, the one thing that we learned growing up is when we needed something, Walter was always there. And if Walter needed something, we were always there. When his crops came in, we were at his house helping him getting them out of the field. When ours came in, he was at our house, and we sat down and we had dinner together. And it was just one of them things. Hey, you vote one way, we vote another way. And it wasn't something that you you were friends with someone because of it. And even now, I find it ridiculous that a person, as a human being, will say to someone, I can't be friends with you because you're a Republican, or I can't be friends with you because you're a Democrat. Okay, we disagree on our political parties, but maybe we like the same football team, we like the same movies, we like the same kind of food, we like the same beers. We have all of that in common. Why are we throwing away a friendship because we don't agree on who we vote for? Like, vote for who you want. Like, I don't care in that aspect. Like, it's just, if you're a good person, you're a good person regardless.
Oh, I love what you just said, because at least here's what I'm hearing. People get into territoriality. This is my territory, and they arm wrestle about that all day long. But then you said, okay, but he needs some help with his crops. What you're talking about is being compassionate to your fellow human being.
Yeah.
And that can overpower everything else. On this new album, there's one more song that kind of grabs that feeling. It's the last song, or I'm going to say last two songs, and it related to you. You remember a couple of years ago when the pandemic was brand new, and from one day to the next, kids were pulled out of school, and they were all suddenly at home. Their parents were thinking, "What the hell do I do now?" And businesses all kind of shut down and everything else, and people didn't know what to do, and kids were scared, and parents were scared, and at that time, COVID was a killer. A million people died of that disease in the United States, and millions more elsewhere. And kids were afraid. And so I wrote a song that was trying to be a bit reassuring. And one inspiration for it was when I was a little kid. My mom had a litter of 5, and I'm right in the middle. I'm number 3. And my youngest brother's David. My mom was tucking him into bed. She says, David, nighty night, sleep tight. Don't let the bed bugs bite. Good night. Turn off the light, leaves. The kid is terrorized. What's a bed bug? And he imagined, he's like 3-4 years old. He imagined these bugs, these insects were in the ceiling, they were going to kill him. And I found myself thinking, what do we tell kids? If you look at the songs that the kids get, 3 blind mice cut off their tails with a carving knife, or Jack and Jill go up the hill, and then Jack comes down and has a neurological injury on the way down. Or the French song,
I can relate to that one.
That's a song about taking a live bird and ripping the feathers off, and you think, oh my God, what is this stuff that we teach these kids? So anyway, I thought, all right, here's my opportunity to try to do something reassuring. So I wrote this lullaby. And the lullaby, I decided I want to have it only be nice stuff, but I'm not a Pollyanna. I'm not like the Hallmark card kind of guy. Like everything's going to be okay, because everything is not going to be okay. I
Right.
mean, let's face it, life ends up tragically for everyone, you know. But what you can say to somebody you love or you're caring for, or that little baby you're tucking in, you could say, "I'm with you." You could say this to an older person you're caring for. "I'm with you. I'm with you now. Things are okay tonight." And so that's what that song is about. And I wrote it in English, about just, it's just nice images of a little kid kind of going to sleep and imagining the stars up there that they could rearrange and have fun with, and then go to sleep. Nothing bad. But then I was sitting in an airport. It's funny how you can write music in any goofy place, like in a departure lounge. I translated it into French because I somehow got a little bit of French into my head. And I translated it into French, and Naïf Era, or Christine Era, is an Italian singer who grew up right next to the French border and is a fabulous singer with Carbonworks. She sings this song in a way that you could be the most nervous person ever, and your heart suddenly thinks, all right, life may suck, but for right now, we're in peace.
Yeah.
We're okay. So the Vanishing Act, when it comes out, you're going to see it ends. It has her singing it in French, and right behind it, it's sung again in English, exactly the same song. And it's just me on the piano, Naïf, or she goes by Dolce now, is singing it in French. Allegra on the violin, and Jeff Phelps, who's a killer cello player, playing just these simple instrumentation, and it'll just take you away, and you're going to think, all right, tomorrow might be all right.
Yeah. One of the things I do is when I first hear a record, the first time I listen to it, I just listen to it all the way through, no interruptions and whatnot. And I write down my first impression of sort of what it reminds me of, or what vibe I get from it. And for this one, I wrote TSO meets Enya is what, because I there were parts in it that really kind of reminded me of like what Trans-Siberian Orchestra does. Not the Christmas aspect of it, but the sort of the symphonic part of it, the violins, the cellos, the sort of classical structure of some of the songs, the beauty of them, but with a lot of the female vocals. They're very ethereal, and they have that almost Enya type quality to them, that they're um, very engaging, and they kind of just, they kind of engulf you in their essence, and you're taken in by them, and they're really, I don't want to use the word ghostly, but kind of in that aspect, like they're very haunting in places, and beautiful, and so well done that it just, I kept just thinking of Enya, because Enya has that very beautiful quality that she sings with, and it's so pure. And she's there's very few singers who I hear that are just so pitch perfect and everything. Alison Krauss is another one who, you know, Allison and Enya are two singers who, they never undersing, they never oversing. They just instinctively know exactly where their voice needs to be within a song. And that's what I kept thinking with these songs. Is these songs were sung so perfectly, it's just so beautifully, that they didn't oversing, they didn't undersing. The vocals were just exactly where they needed to be for
Oh
the
my
song.
goodness! Thank you so much for saying that. I got to tell you a funny story, or not really funny, but I had written a song, one of the songs that's on that album. I could I worked with so many singers, they couldn't get it. They couldn't do it right. And maybe that was on me as the writer. I mean, I write stuff that's really hard to do sometimes because I
Mhm.
write what I want to hear.
Right.
And sometimes it's a goofy time signature like 15/8 time or something like
Mhm.
that. And like tell a drummer to play this. Oh my God, they want to kill themselves. And sometimes with the singers, it's like that too. Like, do you want me to sing how high?
Yeah.
But anyway, I had a song. I had four different singers come in the studio, and I thought, and my engineer would say, "No, I got the perfect person for you. She was here last week. She is the one." And we would do it, and it wasn't there. So one day, I'm jogging down the road. I'm in Sacramento, and I've got my little earbuds on, and I was listening to a Belgian radio station, and there was this singer singing in French, and her name was Naif, Naif, which is French for naive. And I thought, that's it. I just stopped. I said, that is it. Hold on. And so I went back to my hotel room and I dug around and I found her. And now she goes by the name Dolce, Dolche, and she grew up in Italy, right near the French border. So she speaks perfect Italian and perfect French. And I said, I know this is really presumptuous of me, but would you mind could I lure you on to a jet airplane? And would you please come to Washington? And I just want you to work with me in the studio. And she said, absolutely, let's do this. I sent her some of my music and she said, let's do this. And she came into the studio and we just started writing some things, and it was exactly what it had to be.
Yeah.
Martha Roebuck is an incredible singer in Virginia. Sings in English. I've been working with Martha for 3 records now, and Martha's fabulous. And then Laura Lotz, I brought in for the international anthem to sing in German, but she's actually French. And so we've got this funny, goofy salad of people who, for English, Italian, French, German, da da da, you can do all these things. But but there's 2 things about it. One is languages are instruments.
Mhm.
In English, we use consonants a lot. They stick out. In French, it's not. So you say in English, I love you. In French, it's je t'aime. So French is like a saxophone.
Mhm.
English is like a piano. And so you can use these languages for their vocal qualities. But
Mhm.
the other thing is somehow, I don't know why, some things just have to be in a language. Opera to me sounds cheap in English. If
Mhm.
it's in Italian, that's where it should be. I don't know if it's because I don't understand it or whatever, but it makes it better. And
Yeah.
so we've
Italian or
been
German.
using linguistic references. If you want something triumphant, you put it in Latin because that's what people have thought of. If you want something a little romantic, put it in French. Italian has its
Or Cantonese.
classical, but also a little bit of a goofy side. And you use the
Or
lyrics.
Mandarin. I'm sorry, not Cantonese.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you use the lyrics to convey something, but you can kind of make them a little more obscure, make the
Yeah.
the listener work for it a little bit if it's in a different language. Now, you'll be glad to know the lyrics are all printed there for you, but for me, it's really made the music rich.
Yeah. Language is, again, going back to, I guess, international music, certain languages have inherent qualities. Um, the way they're enunciated and spoken and sung, um, romantically, like you said. French is a very romantic language. Mandarin, a lot of the Chinese music, the beautiful Chinese music you hear, will be sung in Mandarin. Because Cantonese is a hard language. It's like German. It's got the hard consonants, and it's more of a uh, my uncle's my uncle was in Vietnam from 1957 until 1971. He chose to stay over there the entire time because he married a woman from Vietnam, and he had a hard time getting the paperwork to bring her back to the United States. So he chose to stay there. In the process of doing that, he learned every language in Southeast Asia. So this man is now 71 years old and speaks like 9 languages. All of them. He can speak Cantonese, Indonesian. He can speak Hmong, um, he can speak Thai and he speaks like all of these languages. And he can go anywhere in Southeast Asia and just talk fluently. And my aunt has learned a lot of these languages from him, and she's a beautiful singer. And when she sings, I've learned that again, you can use language almost like an instrument, because like German, if you want to do a metal song, German or Russian is a great language because it has the hard consonants and the hard notes, and it has that emphasis to it. French, Italian, Mandarin are beautiful languages. Japanese is very frantic. So if you want something like jazz, Japanese is a great language because it has that really odd timing and signature sometimes that works perfectly with certain jazz. So yeah,
each one of these traditions also carries with it their certain musical traditions.
Yeah.
In Vietnamese music, they often start, they've got a song, but before the song starts, they've got kind of a plaintive little melody that's going to go on for a few measures. And it's kind of like the saxophone solo in the rain in New York, just this kind of little sad melody, and then it kicks in. And anyway, I found that exploration fun because you can borrow these things and play with them.
Yeah, and that's what I said. Like music is so amazing in the aspect that my favorite band is Pink Floyd, but my second favorite is Queen. And I love Queen because Freddie was so fearless in what he did. Freddie refused to be locked into a box, so to speak. Okay. Are we a rock band? Are we going to do Broadway? Are we going to do metal? Are we going to do jazz? Are we going to do blues? Freddie just wrote whatever Freddie felt like writing. So you might get Stone Cold Crazy. You might get Bohemian Rhapsody. You might get Bicycle. You might get You're My Best Friend. You might get Good Old Fashioned Lover Boy. Uh, you know, and that's what I love about Queen is you never knew what you were going to get with Queen. Like when you bought an AC/DC record or a Stones record, you knew what you were getting. 3-chord rock and roll that was just fun. But Queen, you bought Queen, and it was like, okay, what are they going to do this time? Because you didn't know. Was he going to do opera? Was he going to do Broadway? Were they going to come, like another one bites at dust? And that was the adventure with Queen is going on that journey of wherever Freddie's mind happened to just sort of be going back and forth. And I think that's what made Freddie so timeless is.
Yeah, exactly. And then what he comes up with then is really an offering to you. Once it's out, it's yours, and you can interpret it in the way you want. You can take it in any way you want. It's going to put some meaning into your life, however you want to interpret it. We just had a new release of one of the songs on Vanishing Act. Okay. It's a really simple, kind of goofy song. It's called Training That Works. And you'll see this video. It's a song back in the 80s. Bob Gray and I were in a band that would play downtown DC. And it was new wave and punk and stuff like that. Nice. And Bob somehow he found a brochure or an advertisement for job training, and it was Training That Works. And somehow in this kind of adolescent way, he started making fun of it, and he wrote this song. And he had me play the lead guitar parts, and somehow the melody is so infectious. It's stuck with me all these years. And I said to Bob on Vanishing Act, I said, I want your song. It's never been on an album. I said, I want that on this record. So we put it in, and it's very cool and great. But anyhow, in my view, however, I said, we need a video. And so the video for it, which you can see now on YouTube, it's called Training That Works by Carbonworks. It's Dave Plunkett. You don't think of him as, rock music or whatever, although I got to say, he did a lot of the music videos for They Might Be Giants.
Oh, nice.
yeah. A very cool guy. But what he's really known for, that's not what he's known for. He's known for the New Yorker. He does these New Yorker covers that are just very simple gut punch covers. He's done many of them for the New Yorker, Barron's, and all these things. But anyhow, he's a friend. So he said, okay, he took this song and did his version of it, which it's kind of like, you know, you'll hear Queen. Mm-hmm. And Queen is going to do something that Freddie wanted to do. But once it gets pressed into vinyl and it's in your house, you're going to interpret it in your own way, and you're going to make it part of your thing. So Bob's song, Dave Plunkett takes it, and he did his video of it, which is wild. And then what we've discovered, that people listening to it and looking at it, it is exactly a Rorschach ink blot. You look at this song and you'll interpret it in exactly your own way. I mean, there's a lot of songs that are not going to be that way. Where it's got one clear meaning, you know, breaking up is hard to do. That's it. You know, I mean, there's not a lot of ambiguity, but with many of these songs, you can take it any way you want. And that's what this is. I hope people have a chance to look at it, and I think they're going to have fun with it.
Yeah. That's sort of the Frank Zappa philosophy of, you know, Frank was kind of well known. If you know anything about Frank Zappa, Frank never played the song the same way twice. Like, it was a continuous challenge for Frank to never play it the same way twice, because it was boring. So he would literally just improvise everything. And, you know, his band, whether it was Mothers of Invention or the guys that backed him up as a solo act, never got enough credit, because they walked on stage every night having no idea what Frank was going to do. Nobody knew. Frank didn't know. There's numerous interviews out there that Frank will say, I just play in the moment, and I play whatever comes to mind at that exact moment. So these guys walked to a stage having no idea where Frank was going to go, and having to keep up and follow him and sound like they knew what they were doing. And I don't envy them a bit for having the testicular fortitude to do that, because playing music is hard. And to walk onto a stage having no clue what was coming, you know, like, okay, we know this song, this is how we're going to play it. Okay, awesome. You can do that night after night. But walking onto that stage with someone like Frank Zappa and having zero idea how he was going to play that song that night, and you just had to be ready for anything, that's a whole nother level of musical insanity. But it's what made Zappa so amazing. Like, Zappa, again, he was one of them geniuses who just thought on a different wavelength than the average human. And, you know, the guy, you had to marvel. You have to marvel at what he did and what he could do, whether it was classical, whether it was jazz, whether it was rock, whether it was blues. It's just, you know, it was Frank Zappa, and there was no mistaking it for anyone else. And again, you know, going back to this record, I kind of hear a little bit of that in there, not in the aspect that it sounds like Zappa, but again, it's got that spirit of, you know, it's very inventive, very creative, and very outside of the box. You know,
that's funny you would say that, CJ. I got to tell you, when Naif came over from Italy, who I was describing earlier, that's exactly what she said. She said, "Neal, you are Frank Zappa," and I thought, I didn't feel that way at all. You know, I mean, let's face it, Frank was a little crude sometimes.
Yeah.
Very. And I am not. That's not all right. Not really. That's really not my thing. So I guess that's what I keyed into. But I think what she meant is what you meant. Is one thing about him is he would do what he wanted to do. He would explore something nobody had ever explored before, and he said, "Come on, let's go," and they would go. And you know,
hilarious story about him. Me and a friend ordered. We wanted the Dweezil Zappa, one of the Dweezil Zappa CDs, and I had one of the Dweezil CDs already, and I wanted the new one. Couldn't find it in a record store, so I looked on the back of the record to figure out, where you would send, or who you could contact to get this record. And it said Barking Pumpkin Records, and it had a phone number. And I called the phone number, and the guy, hello. And I was like, yeah, this is the label for Dweezil Zappa, and just going on about how I wanted this record. And he's talking, and it took me about 3 minutes to realize I was talking to Frank. And I was like, I stopped and I was like, holy shit, you're Frank, aren't you? He goes, yeah. I was like, you answer your own phone? He's like, who the hell else would answer it? And I was like, I thought you would have like secretaries or people. And he's like, no, we run this shit out of our living room.
Oh, holy
Like,
cow, that's incredible.
I knew he had his own label,
Yeah.
but it was Frank Zappa. I assumed that he had a warehouse and he had people who worked for him and people who, no, this was his literal home phone that he answered and took his own orders and shipped his own stuff. And I was so blown away by the fact that, again, this dude was so, it's like, who the hell puts their home phone number on the back of a CD?
Yeah. These days, nobody but men, yeah.
And I wonder how many people called that number having no idea that Frank Zappa was going to answer the damn phone and not even care. Like, it was, and he was very crude. And, Frank did a lot of things, I think, for shock value, but again, it never took away from his genius to me,
right,
of just thinking on another plane.
And also, if a person can combine that kind of brilliance and also just technical mastery, then you've really got, something.
Yeah. Parting at Metrograph, the video. I want to talk about that a little bit. What is that in kind of, I guess, in a nutshell? Is it like a live video that you guys have, or?
Yeah. Metrograph is in downtown New York. And when the Carbonworks record came out, it was 2016, and I wanted people to know about Carbonworks, and so we booked the Metrograph. It's a movie theater, and I wanted an intimate and like relatively small theater. And Alec Baldwin came and was our host.
Nice.
And Alec Baldwin with Hilaria, his wife, and they came because they've been friends of ours for a really long time. And Maggie Q, the actor, came as well, and Maggie Q and Alec were our hosts, which was really cool. And so Naif sang, and I showed a billion videos, and we just blabbed about stuff. But the other piece of it is that I have an organization. I'm a doctor, and I went to medical school. I'm kind of halfway through my musical career. I decided I wanted to go to medical school, and that's what I've done. And I still do both. And I have an organization called the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine that does clinical research, and it does education, tries to help people eat better, and it deals with ethical issues in medicine. And so it was a fundraiser for that. And that's to tell you the truth, that's the reason that Alec came out. And you'll kind of hear in the music this idea that there is suffering in the world, and we need to do what we can to counteract that suffering.
Yeah, one of the things that one of the only a lot of podcasts or a lot of people, they want to sell merchandise. I have one piece of merchandise, and it's a heart with musical notes to it, and the theme of it basically is music heals, because that's how I end every show, and that's my main point of doing this. Is music is what has healed me through my brain injury, where if you see this beautiful scar that runs up the middle of my forehead, music has been the one constant thing that has saved my life on so many occasions. When the darkness overwhelms me, music is that one thing I have that can sort of bring me out of it. And all the different flavors, all the different moods, all the different emotions and styles can be used, whether I'm angry and I need metal or whether I just want to kind of chill out and I can use like, jazz or Pink Floyd, whether I'm happy and I want to listen to reggae. Um, there's so many emotions that can be pervade through music, and it's such a powerful thing, in music therapy is something that I've championed because I've worked with people with Alzheimer's, and I've seen the research and I've seen in person Alzheimer's patients who are completely despondent, have no recognition, and are just not there. And putting on music that they recognize can bring them completely back to a lucid state of being perfectly normal because it's the one thing that their brain connects to.
I'm
And
so glad to hear you say that. It's you can take a person, you can put them into a positron emission tomography scanner, a PET scanner, and you can give them heroin, and you can show that that'll affect the brain, and you could see the dopaminergic neurons light up. You could give that person a big dose of alcohol, and you can make the brain light up. You can give them foods, really unhealthy foods, the foods that people get addicted to, and you can modify brain chemistry with all these things. And all these things have the upside where you feel great and the downside that you are destroying yourself. In that same scanner, you can show that music will turn on the neurons as well. You get that dopamine flowing with no calories, no toxicity, no danger whatsoever. And in all different moods, in all different ways. I mean, there is a reason why people turn to this. Things that stir the mind get industries behind them. That's why there's a liquor industry and a drug industry and all these kinds of things. But there is a huge music industry because you are touching people. You're touching people in their mind. And it goes all over the place, and it goes in ways that are beautiful, ways that are violent and aggressive, and all. I mean, it's got every possible flavor. But the point I'm making is that the idea that it touches the mind, it touches the heart. I mean, these aren't just words.
yeah,
It's true. And I've often thought that when people have arts of any kind, but whether it's dance or visual arts, but especially, at least for me, music, and sounds like for you too,
mm-hmm.
kind of makes life worth living.
Yeah. Well, we had a gentleman who um he was in his late 80s, and he was a cowboy. He grew up in Wyoming. He spent most of his life in Wyoming. He was in World War I and World War II, but he was a cowboy through and through. Owned a ranch for his entire life, rode horses. Um, and when he ended up in this nursing home, he would get he would just be almost zombie like when he would get in his Alzheimer states, and he wouldn't recognize anything. You couldn't work with him. He would be combative and he would scratch and try to bite. And, that's all part of, again, not recognizing it and being scared. Um, but we discovered the music of Gene Autry and Roy Rogers. If you put that on the radio, he would, it was almost instantaneous. He would be right back to being himself, and he could talk to you perfectly. He recognized, total recall. It blew our mind because it was like, how is this music bringing him from this other side of, like 1 minute you're biting and scratching, you don't recognize anything, you don't know who you are or where you're at, and then a minute into this cowboy song and you're just back, like nothing is wrong with you. And I just, it's so powerful to me. Like, I don't understand why it's not used more, and it's not researched more, and it's not used as medicine more, therapeutically, or whatever aspect the medical field has available. Um, I know music therapy is out there and it's used in schools and different things, but I've worked at nursing homes where it wasn't used, and I've said, hey, have you ever tried this? Oh, that doesn't work. That would be a waste of time. And I've told them, I have seen firsthand, it is not a waste of time. And if you used it, I promise it would all, you don't know what you're talking about. You're not a trained doctor. You're not a psychologist. You're not, okay. It's just a suggestion. I'm just a guy who's, I'm just a guy who's wiping their butt and cleaning
Well,
dead
wait,
people's butt.
you're onto something, because when a person is having the very beginnings of dementia,
Mhm.
talking about a person, they don't have a diagnosis of Alzheimer's yet. They're just starting to have problems. What the problems that they'll have is they lose words.
Mhm.
They can't remember the name of an actor, or they see somebody in the store, they can't remember their name. So the verbal part starts to degenerate, and as time goes on, they lose that. But the musical part, the ability to remember a song they heard as a kid, or a song they heard when they were dating, when they were in love, um, when they were in school, those things live on, and the neurons are dedicated to them. And if you finally just say, okay, let me reach that part of your brain, that's the part of their brain that is probably thriving
Mhm.
still, and you've given them a wonderful gift.
Yeah. Like I said, I had a job, and I got really frustrated because the director of the place just, she outright refused to let us explore it or use it with the patients. We don't have a policy for it, and if something happens, blah blah blah. And I think, okay, I understand that in the aspect, but if something happens, like, what do you think is going to happen? Like, they're in a vegetative state. They're kicking and biting. They're terrified because they don't know anything. And, well, you have to deal with them in a certain way. And I'm like, I deal with them like a child, because mentally, that's what they are. And people are, what, how could you be so patient with them? How can you not? They don't understand. It's not their fault that they're kicking and biting. Their brain isn't connecting. Why are you getting angry at somebody who, if you're scared, what do? Why fight?
Well, what's happened is, when we're little, when you're a little baby,
Yeah.
that's what you can do. You can scream, you can wet yourself, and so forth.
Yeah.
And as time goes on, neurologically, we learn inhibition. We learn how to inhibit ourselves from screaming. We're able to make words.
Mhm.
Instead of breaking things, we can touch things and place them. And much of the process of neurological maturation is inhibiting impulses, or so that we sculpt them into something that makes sense. And the same is true with cultures. When cultures learn to inhibit, okay, maybe I can enslave people, or I can rape women, but maybe I should inhibit those impulses. And in
Right.
fact, we can work cooperatively. Cultures have the same process of inhibition, which is part of civilization. My point is that at the end of life, that inhibition is lost. And so when people are afraid or scared, they don't have diplomacy. They don't have an ability to reason. They're just scared.
Mhm.
And so they act out in the only way that they can. But what
Exactly.
you're doing is you're saying, let me reach you in the only way that I can,
Yeah.
in a way that's going to
It's
mean something to them, and it's going to be very gentle.
it, it's it's again, it's going back to just being compassionate and being kind and understanding that, look, they're not acting the way they're acting because they want to, or because they're hateful, or because they mean to do that. Again, like you said, they're doing the only thing they know to protect themselves. And returning the anger back, using force against force, is never going to achieve anything good, especially if you're dealing with an elderly patient. And that's what drove me from their profession is seeing people who would slap these people back, that would push them down on the bed. They would physically hold them down and restrain them, or they would, use restraints. And I mentally, I couldn't deal with that. Like it was cruel to me, and it was abusive, but it was so systematically widespread. It was just, oh, that's policy. Excuse my language, but your policy fucking sucks. Okay. Like, and I can't ethically stand by and be a part of it. We don't have to be a part of it. Just stand back. I don't want to stand in the same building. I don't want to be in a building that I know this is going on in.
There's a lot in medicine. There's a
Yeah.
lot in medicine, not just in psychiatry, but in all of medicine, that can be very helpful, but also can be perverted or can be very short-sighted, and where we're not doing the things that are really the best.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry to say that compassion is one of the things that's lost, because medicine is so kind of brain heavy. We've
Mhm.
really got to think of facts and learn facts. And we took it as unfortunate or undoctor-like if you were too compassionate, because that meant you didn't have the kind of the hardness that it took to understand blood and guts and surgery. But what we've come to understand is that when a person has some compassion, they become the best possible doctor,
Yeah.
or nurse, or PA, or whatever their job is.
Yeah.
And in my work now, we do a huge amount of work where we try to understand the causes of illness, whether a person's got diabetes or hypertension or high cholesterol or whatever the heck it is, cardiovascular disease. It's not caused by a deficiency of medication. It's not caused by a deficiency of metformin or lisinopril. It's usually caused by what people are eating, and they stumble into unhealthy habits, not maliciously, but they just have. And so people need some help finding that way out. And it ends up being a very gentle way of practicing medicine, but it is astounding how powerful it is. So anyway, I've got to say, I'm not sure that medicine and music really go super well together, but that's been my life so far.
Yeah. So this new record, it comes out March 1st of next year, and it's called Vanishing Act.
That's right.
Right. Now this is going to be, is it just going to be online, or is it going to have physical copies available that they can buy?
Everything. It's going to be online. It's going to be CDs. It's going to be vinyl. And if you want me to, I will come to your house and sing it to you.
Nice. I definitely would like to get my hands on some of the vinyl. I am trying to start. I grew up in a house where we had thousands and thousands of vinyl records, and over the years, I've had one record that stayed with me my entire life. Every other vinyl I've either lost, or it's been stolen or misplaced or broken or whatever. And this damn Peter Frampton Comes Alive record, through basic training, through traveling the world, I've still got the original 1976 copy of the LP my dad bought me when I was 6 years old. This record has stuck to me like Gorilla Glue. And it is the only record, like, I couldn't lose this thing if I tried. Like,
all right, I got to send you this one. This is our last. This is a
I love
Carbonworks
that cover
2016.
too. That,
Beautiful cover.
yeah,
This
I
is
love
this
that.
is a young samurai who's going to make the world a better place. I'll have to put this on your record player.
Awesome. So this is Dr. Neal Barnard. Carbonworks Vanishing Act comes out March 1st of this coming year. Amazing record. So many textures, so many. You hear people use the word sonic landscape, but this is really what this thing is there are so many different layers and qualities to this thing on so many levels that it's really hard to describe accurately. Like I said, I sat and I listened to this thing, and like I said, Trans-Siberian Orchestra and Enya was really the only things that came to mind that were close to what kind of encapsulated or encompass, I guess, what this record sort of is like, because it's so big and it's so grandiose and beautiful, that I really couldn't think of anyone else that was worthy, I guess, of being compared to it, and this is it's a beautiful, masterful record, man. And I really love this record. And it's one of those records that when I go to sleep at night, I put it on the phone and I play it through my Bluetooth as I go to sleep, because it's awesome music to just kind of, have the lights off and you're kind of there, and it just completely, you know, so.
Well, that is so nice. Thank you so much. Coming from you, that's huge. Thank you so much for that.
So everyone, where do they find you? Where do they find the other records, the Metrograph video, the self-titled one, the Inspired by Vietnam stuff, which I guess you said was a compilation of other songs. Where do they find
our website is carbonworksmusic.com. Carbonworks, carbon, as we're made of carbon, music is, what can you say? Carbonworksmusic.com. That's the website. But go to YouTube and look at the Carbonworks channel there. There's lots of videos there. And they're kind of cool. And they go all just as you were saying, there's kind of a whole landscape of music there.
Yeah.
So I hope people enjoy it. And Vanishing Act is going to be out in the new year. And hope you like it. And all the streaming, Apple Music, iTunes, Spotify, everywhere, you'll see it.
Awesome. Thank you for coming on here and listening to my insane rambling and
no, it's wonderful to talk stories.
To you. As always, you know how we do this. We always end with the same thought: be well, treat each other with kindness, and remember that no matter what's going on in your life, music heals. So with that said, we're gonna slide out of here, let the doctor get back to doing what he needs to do, and we will be back soon with another episode.